Hello and welcome to the Education on Fire show. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for those who are here watching live and those of you coming back onto the replay. We've got a fascinating conversation coming up about the London Interdisciplinary School. And just to let you know that I actually did the audio podcast with Carl 2 or 3 weeks ago. It went live, and I'll leave you the link to that towards the end of the show. But that's on the audio podcast, so you get lots of background ideas about exactly what's going on from there. So I really hope you can go back and listen to that, as well as obviously the great conversation that we're going to have today. So as always, please don't forget to subscribe and also hit that notification. There are lots of these lives that are going to be coming up at different times over the next few weeks and months, so that way you're going to get all the information sent directly to you. And of course, in terms of the audio podcast, you can get them on all the usual platforms. So do go to educationonfire.com/listen. Takes you to this page, then you can click straight through and follow, subscribe, whatever that particular platform does, and then you can get all the latest audio podcasts directly to your device. And then you're in good shape and good to go. So a couple of things just before we get started. If you have any questions, if you have any comments, please do feel free to put them in the chat, and then we can bring those up onto screen. We can ask some of the people directly if it's a specific question, put them on the spot to kind of answer some of those things. But yeah, so we can make it as interactive as we can, and I can collate those as we're going through and do a bit of a Q&A as we get towards the end. So yeah, I really do hope you want to get involved. If you just want to put it as a question, then put a Q colon in front of it. If it's just a comment, then we can do that and just allow that to go through. And if you're at the university and you've got some thoughts you'd like to share, please do that as well, and we can sort of siphon those in as we go through. But we thought, first of all, I'll just check in terms of this particular episode. So this gives you a chance each week. If you go to educationonfire.com, takes you through to the latest one. As you can see there, there's Carl's episode, was 377. This week we were here actually talking about the leaders algorithm. And Pablo, who has been in school administration over in the States, has this fantastic book that's helping out leaders both in terms of education but also in other areas of business as well. So do go and check that out if you haven't done that already. And I know his book is available now. So just before we get started, we thought we'd actually watch this video, which I think kind of gives an initial starting point and a good bit of impact as to what the London Interdisciplinary School actually is.
Who are LIS in 60 seconds? We'll show you. We're LIS, the most radical thing to happen to higher education in, well, a long time. Our students study real-world challenges like sustainability, inequality, and AI. Why? Because these challenges are happening right now. They're not made up. They're also messy and complex, their solutions are uncertain and unclear, and we think they can only be tackled with some serious interdisciplinary thinking. This means combining knowledge and skills from across the disciplines, science, humanities, and the arts. We saw the need for radical interdisciplinary learning in a way that didn't exist yet. So we've created undergraduate and master's degrees for the 21st century, as well as some programs for professionals. Our first students joined in 2021, and it's been extraordinary. We've helped them get internships with innovative organisations. They've pitched their ideas to philanthropists and investors. We might be small, we might be new, you might even call us an underdog, but we're changing the game. Come and see what we're doing, because we are doing it. That's why we're LIS.
So I really hope you enjoyed that. It gives you a really sort of, like I say, an immediate impact of what it is, a new university, and we've got 3 students as well as Carl sort of going to take us into exactly how that's going to work. So let's bring them on now and introduce them all for you. So welcome to you all. Thank you so much for joining us this evening.
Hi, Mark. Nice to be here.
Fantastic. So Carl, why don't you start us off just with a little sort of follow-on to that video? What doesn't that say, or what would you like people to to understand from it in this way?
Yeah, oof. I mean, it's a good video, actually. I like it. And it's nice to see Logan featured there with a different haircut. 2 years out of date now, Logan? But good to see you there. So, I mean, I think in some ways, what we do is really simple, but really radical. We focus on real-world problems. That's the core of our curriculum in terms 1, 2, 3, and 4 over the first 2 years. And we teach a bunch of methods to tackle those problems. And then we ask the students to use the methods increasingly as they go through the years to actually focus those methods on tackling the problem. So at the beginning, you've got to spend some time learning the methods, because it takes a bit of while to learn, enough data science to do anything meaningful, or enough ethnographic research, or enough video making to do anything meaningful. But eventually and gradually, you start to actually apply those to the real world problems. And all the time, they're learning about these real world problems. They work in groups. They do all sorts of modern skills like stakeholder management, framing of the problem. And they learn about, these big themes, a lot of which are interconnected anyway: inequality, sustainability, intimately connected. But just to go back to that big picture, it's really simple because it's literally just problems and methods, but it's completely radical because we don't emphasize single academic subjects. We think that that's blown open now by the internet and by the fact that real world problems don't respect any academic subject boundaries. You have to have an interdisciplinary approach to even begin to understand those problems. So that makes it completely different from any curriculum in the UK, and possibly actually in the world. Although in the US there are things that are a bit more similar, but I don't think there's anything quite like this in the world at the moment. So the radical tag, I think, is genuine, but we're very open at LIS. We love being challenged on everything. So if someone can find a curriculum that's just like ours, I'd love to know about it.
Fantastic. And we've got some pictures as well that we'll work through. I think there's about 15 or so, and I think that sort of gives a good idea of sort of the feel of the school and the way that you work, and lots of people sort of getting involved. So we'll work through that as we go through the show. So Rachel, why don't you get us starting from that student point of view, a little bit of background in terms of your journey, and I'm particularly interested in not just what you're studying while you're sort of there, but also why LES was LIS rather was that kind of place you wanted to go, as opposed to that sort of traditional university in inverted commas.
Yeah, thanks. I think so. I had actually been to a traditional university at 18. I went to the University of Southampton and I studied law for about 18 months. And then I decided, for different reasons, that wasn't kind of what I wanted to be doing. I couldn't see myself becoming a lawyer. And I kind of really lost my kind of motivation, interest in the single discipline. And I decided to go to work. And then I worked for almost 6 years, predominantly in kind of project management, change management, and product management in kind of the digital spaces. But I found that when I was at work, I was dealing with lots of complex problems and was kind of thrust into like a management position at quite a young age. And kind of felt that I hadn't had the opportunity to develop perhaps like my critical thinking skills and just kind of absorb knowledge, which I think is something that is like a unique space that university offers you. And so it was kind of a two-pronged decision for me, where I had this love for learning, really wanted to have my degree, felt that the way that society is structured would meant that to get into really large leadership or like senior leadership roles, it was going to become a ceiling for me of not having this quote unquote ticket of having a degree, but was really against going back into, for example, finishing the law degree, which would have been quite easy with my credits on something like the Open University, because I was interested in too many things. And having worked in like the industry for 6 years, I felt that getting really specialized in one subject area wasn't actually going to equip me or put me into a better decision, having made the financial investments of a 3-year degree to then come back out into the workplace. So when I came across LIS, for me, it was like an amalgamation of all of the different things I was looking for, which was the ability to get a breadth of knowledge across lots of different subject areas, not having to give up any of my interests, actually feeling that I would graduate with new methods that like employers want and I was employing for as a hiring manager. And just something that I really felt was a solid like 3-year career plan.
I love that. And I love the fact that it's like you were sort of looking for something which then came across your desk, as it were, as opposed to having all these different options coming through from that sort of practical experience as well, which I think is great. And one of the things we're keen to get across today is sort of people, whoever they are and whatever backgrounds or situations they're in, what it is that university can offer, and exactly like I said, from that sort of work standpoint as well as sort of other universities. So Logan, why don't you take us into your journey in terms of sort of why this university and your sort of path into it?
Yeah, so I joined LIS as part of the founding cohort, so now almost 3 years ago, which is really something, when I look back on it, has been an amazing journey. But I came out straight of A-levels, and I'd done psychology, sociology, maths and French, which is already quite a like quite a broad selection of A levels to do. And well, at the time when you're in sixth form and you've got all your careers advisors, etc., saying to apply for university and writing a personal statement, one of my biggest frustrations really was that I was too, like, very similar to Rachel, interested in so many different things, and I could only write one personal statement when I wanted to apply to 5 different degrees, which really didn't work in my favor. So I, as probably most 18-year-olds, just got very frustrated and decided, no, do you know what? I'm going to take a gap year. And funnily enough, shortly after that decision, I found out about a discovery day of LIS. And so I was like, why not? Went on the discovery day and honestly was just captivated by this idea of being able to look at the world and the complexity in which, like, we live in today through the lenses of so many different disciplines, and being equipped with the tools to interrogate but also approach and tackle these problems, I think was something that really drew me to this degree. And that, plus the combination of the quality of faculty and staff that were at LIS, really gave me the push to come here as the first ever students. And yeah, I don't regret that decision any
And
bit.
just picking up on what you said there, you must have gone on open days to other places as well. Was it kind of that atmosphere? Was it the way the day was set out, or was it purely the fact what was being offered that sort of made the difference between that sort of traditional and LIS?
Well, I think what makes me quite unique is your assumption would be quite wrong, in the sense that I just gave up on traditional education. I was like, this is not for me. As soon as I read a couple of prospectuses, and I was like, this is not what I want or where I would feel comfortable learning. And I'm not going to lie, I'm one of those rare cases where LIS was the one and only option for me.
Got you. Now that makes perfect sense. And I love the fact that there would be so many people who are sort of disheartened by what they've experienced in wanting to do something which isn't, like, say, that traditional way. I know certainly my career's conversation when I was at school, because I'm a musician now, was kind of, you can become a teacher or you can go in the army. That didn't really give me the pathway that actually got me to where I was. So I know that sort of thing was only when certain doors were opened and certain conversations happened that I kind of realised that there was a professional world out there and places that you go to study, as Carl and I chatted about on the audio podcast. And Lamar, take us into your journey and your experience of it so far.
Yeah, so mine is a bit different compared to Logan and Rachel's. I was someone that was very narrow-minded when I started off. I know, guys, sorry, Carl, I should admit it. But I was very interested in politics and international relations from a very young age. It's something that I told myself from the youngest age of about 14, 15. Yeah, at university, this is what I'm going to do. So throughout year 12, I intended to go about with learning more about politics and international relations. And then when it came time to apply for university, one of my teachers, my old history and politics teacher, she has a friend that actually works at LIS, who is their head of schools outreach. And she said, "Oh, I think this university is something that you should go for." Because I feel that she realized that I was much more of an interdisciplinary thinker than I thought I was. And I got my offer from LIS quite early on as well. The interview, I loved the interview. Questions were great, really stretched me and challenged me. And for me, it was a case of throughout year 13, I had become a lot more, I realized a lot more of the narrow-minded things that would have happened if I would go on to carry on a politics and international relations degree. And I kind of got the sense of that throughout doing my A levels as well. And that the fact that it wants to make you think in a very specific way. And a funny story as well, during A levels, I was actually helping friends that had done sociology, and I didn't study it, which was quite, it shocked them as well. They all thought I was in the other class when I actually wasn't. So it's just little things like that that kind of gave me hints. Oh, maybe I should consider going to LIS. And I wrote on results day. I didn't get into my firm university. And my mum, she was actually always rooting for me to go to LIS as well. It was partly just to stay in London, but the other side was that she's very big on doing new things and changing the narrative. So yeah, I ended up here on the basis that I didn't get the grades that I would have needed to get into my firm or insurance. But now that I'm here, I'm glad that I know it's gonna sound a bit like weird, but I'm glad that I failed, because if I didn't fail, then I'd be unhappy. So yeah, like being here is it's been great, especially because I don't have much of a quantitative background, but it's really made me fall back in love with like mathematical sciences.
Fantastic.
Yeah, I've got to say, Lamar's amazed the way he's taking on the quant challenge, and he's being a bit generous with the love word there, but it's amazing. I mean, we do insist, that wherever you're from, you've got to understand the role of data science in the modern world. And for Lamar, and probably actually for Rachel, who's been away from studying for a long time, to take on these quant learning data science, basically Python and how you use it, challenges is immense. But you have to really love learning, and I know Lamar does. I've chatted with him a little bit since he got here, and it's kind of be almost addicted to learning, really, to enjoy this place. But that's just a great quality to have in life in the modern world. I really think that people are going to succeed throughout their whole lives. The people that are kind of addicted to learning or certainly love it. And I think all these guys on the call today, and most of our students, in fact, are really, they love learning. And they love the challenge, and being up for the struggle of learning when it's tough is part of the enjoyment for them, and that's just fantastic.
And is there a particular project focused, an area that you've particularly enjoyed so far? So Rachel, says, what's your sort of take on that in terms of your sort of couple of years that you've been there?
Well, I think actually my last term, so my first term of my second year, was kind of when I really got into my groove, and we get to take some elective modules into the second year once we've kind of got that foundation of interdisciplinary thinking and doing. And two modules were a real trade-off for me on absolutely brilliant, which was the material science and like making module, and actually Carl's module of super concepts and mental models. But I think we're going to come to that. It looks like that's all I'm saying it just because he's here to flatter, but it truly did change kind of the way I view the world. But I think we're coming to that one later, so I'll go ahead with the materials and making. It's an elective module, 10 weeks alongside kind of our core modules. It's a quantitative based method, so we have to do kind of an equal split between quantitative and qualitative methods, and it's kind of looking at basically the material science behind everything in the world, products, how are they made, and then connecting that to making it. So over 10 weeks we combined that theory and that like quantitative side with actual making workshops where we got to go and do for example like woodworking, ceramics, we went blacksmithing, and it was all kind of with a view of at the end making a wearable product from within a 10-mile radius of LIS, of our campus, that had kind of a sustainability element. And I absolutely love this module because I think it was the first module in which I felt I had like real agency and choice over like what I could go and do, and like a way to expand kind of my interests. And I actually made an acupressure t-shirt. So there's kind of these acupressure products on the market, these mats that you can lay on. They're used by lots of athletes or people just interested in well-being. And I was like, we should make this portable. And kind of made this product over 10 weeks. And I just thought it was, what a unique opportunity, particularly somewhere in like London, where if you tried to pay for 7 different types of workshops of the kind that I've alluded to, it would cost you hundreds and hundreds of pounds. And so I really appreciated that module and the way it really challenged how I thought about how are things actually made, why are they made that way, why do we select specific materials, and how could things be made better. And kind of as a result of that module, I'm kind of being pushed a little bit to see if there's a market for it as a product. And I'm kind of into term 2 and taking on all these other new modules, but it's on the back burner of something I might explore in future. But that was a real highlight for me.
Yeah, I love that, and I love the fact that there've been many people thinking that doesn't sound like my 10 weeks at university in other experiences, and I think it's great to sort of get that in a nutshell. Logan, how about yourself?
Um, I think it's for me it's a really tough question because I've been thinking about that quite a bit recently, and I realized that through LIS, like you're exposed to so many different disciplines and perspectives on the world, but also you're exposed to so many different complex problems. So like inequality, sustainability, urban futures, ethics and AI. And throughout that journey, you kind of change and grow in like what you're interested in, if that makes sense. And what I really appreciate is that LIS gives you the space to kind of investigate those interests in that point in time. For example, when in my first year I was very keen on sustainability and impact investing and startups. So my C project, which is like the third term project that we work on individually, was around how could we like quantify impact. Whereas my second term project was around looking at the correlations between neurodiversity and interdisciplinarity as a pedagogy, and which I think is like very reflective of like how I changed through my time at LIS, but also how LIS gave me the space to explore these ideas freely and with the right support as well. Um, yeah, I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's fantastic, and I know Lamar, you're only sort of early into your journey, but is there something which sort of has that sort of immediate kind of hit of yeah, this is something that I'm really keen that I was able to experience in such an initial part of your study?
For me, of course, yeah, it's only been a couple months, but I really loved the first problems module. So the first problem module, problems 1A, that's where you look at inequality. And I really enjoyed it because, of course, coming from a low socioeconomic background, and from a single parent household, it's really helped me to understand how I can actually make my life academic and get in a range of different perspectives as well. Because I think coming straight out of A levels, you're only used to your three subjects. So coming here and like having the option to have different perspectives and disciplines, like that really excited me, and it's something that I really enjoyed. And I wish that it was something that more people could have access to as well, because some people would only probably study that for like part of their course and not think much of it. Whereas for me, that's something that I'll always look back on and think, oh, how can I make inequality linked to sustainability, and how can that help my, my 1C project? So yeah, it's something that has really helped me to lay the foundation for my interdisciplinary thinking.
Yeah, fantastic. And we've had a question come in, so I think it sort of fits in a little bit to what you've been speaking about. So I think it's worth us having a look at this. So I don't know if you can see that from Anton. Thank you so much for doing it, and yeah, please feel free to keep putting those in. But quantitative thinking is hard, but very rewarding once you get it. And the world is becoming more data driven. How do you persuade someone not so confident in mathematics to engage?
This is our quantitative methods lead teacher, Mark, just so you know.
Okay,
and
yes.
I hired this guy, and I can say, because we're not quite in working hours, I absolutely love him. I love you, Anson. You're fantastic on air.
Second that.
Yeah, got more love from the students. It's good.
Great.
Well, let's ask the students. I shouldn't say any more on this. How do we help students with no math background or who really are challenged by maths? How do we help them to engage? Can we start with Lamar and then go the other way this time? Is that all right, Mark?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, perfect.
Go for it, Lamar.
I think for me, it wasn't too hard for me to personally be engaged with it, because it's something that I always wanted to do, but I wanted to do knowing that I would have the opportunity to learn more, to be able to grasp concepts more. But I think what I'd say to someone is to think about the way that the world is structured and the way that the world is moving forward, and think about how they may be left behind if they don't have this skill, if they don't have access to understanding this. And I think that for me as well, now I've learned to emphasize a lot more on perspective. So not being able to delve deeply into the perspective of someone that is a data scientist, I don't think that you'll be able to be as much as a generalist or be able to enter in as much conversations as possible if you don't allow for yourself to be immersed within that space.
Yeah. And Logan?
I think I'm very biased in this because I'm very much a quant person. But I think the way I think of it is like, coming to LIS, there's going to be people who are very quanti and not so quali, or qualitative, like qualitative, so qual, and some people who are more quali and not quanti, and some people who lie in the middle. And realizing that for those who are uncomfortable with quants, like, someone else is going for a very similar experience with qualitative side of things. That's A. And B, I think of it in the sense of like, philosophy helps us structure like concepts and thoughts and logic and argumentation, and well, math and quant kind of helps us structure the world and understand how we understand it. And that's like both the qual and the quant side. And to gain a holistic but also be able to think of the world in an interdisciplinary way, you do need the best of both worlds. Therefore, it is a worthwhile endeavor to like actually persevere through the quant side and like engage with it.
And it seems to me, just from hearing you chatting just for these last few minutes, that because you've got that perspective of the outside world, how you fit in it, what you're interested in, where you think that may lead in some way or another, your starting point with all of these ideas is very different than, I think, as Lamar alluded to before, I'm just at school doing my 3 subjects. Now I'm going to go to university and study something else, and then I'm going to get a job. And I think just sort of having that different mindset from this moment on, just sort of, I can see why these ideas are something which you can take a step back enough to understand why you're doing it and how you're doing it and why it's going to be of benefit. And Rachel, what are your thoughts?
Just before Rachel, can I just jump in for a second?
Absolutely,
because
Carl, yeah.
I took 3 different students. You'll know, guys on the call. I took Sam Omakan, Priya Mistry, and Jala Mohammed, who's at first year. Again, a third year, second year, first year, to a big event last week in PricewaterhouseCoopers. Put it on, the big consultancy firm, and in that group, it's called the Whitehall Industry Group, and it's the big matchmaking session between the higher ups in the civil service, the director generals and so on, and some big industry hitters. And our students, I have to say, were absolutely amazing. And I'm getting a bit of a buzz and a bit of a thrill about it again tonight. And what I mean is that they were able to reflect on their own learning and themselves and their learning in that context in a way which I think is really, really unusual in undergraduates. And one of the director generals from one of the major departments of the government came up to me. He was actually a quantity person. He was a very, very smart person, a scientist by background, and said, it's amazing watching your students, because he said, at my age, my thoughts would have run away with me, is what he said. He just like blare to the floor, and I don't know how this is happening. Honestly, it's not very self-conscious. We talk about metacognition, but something about the way the students are putting together these perspectives and something it's doing to their own development, and then the way they're owning that development and able to articulate. Honestly, I'm getting quite excited from what I heard 2 weeks ago from 3 students, and again tonight, because that metacognition, that sense making of your own learning, your place in whatever situation you're in, is so sort of contemporary. You're not just, it's kind of like almost like a medical critical thinking of who you are and your place in your work or what you're studying. And that, I think, brings a lot of maturity and sophistication to whatever you're doing, whether it's in a workplace or a political environment or creative environment. So I mean, perhaps I'm oversharing, but me as a sort of educator here, it's quite exciting. It's almost like a big mind shift I'm seeing in some of our undergraduates. That I don't know how you measure this. I don't know how you do the experiment. I don't know how you really evidence it, but it does seem that some kind of meta thinking is going on, which I think honestly would outshine a lot of undergraduates in a lot of degrees.
Yeah,
Can
absolutely.
I respond to that quickly?
Yeah,
And
please
just
do.
like, I think there's a part of it that has to do with the course structure, just because there are bits of like, may there be assessments or just what we're taught in the value of thinking about one's thinking and like looking back on one's journey and identifying one's own biases, but also one's like perspective. And the fact that it's integrated within the degree itself, I think is, sometimes you might have to do it for an assignment, but a couple of weeks after, you kind of sit there and just think on your own, because why not? And I think that's a big contributor to that feeling.
Yeah, love it.
Thanks. Sorry, I interrupted Rachel before she was talking about quants.
That's right. We'll bring in, and we've got a couple of questions which are going to come in, kind of related to what we've been chatting about. So we will come to those. Thanks for putting those in or whatever. But yeah, Rachel, please, your thoughts on that.
Yeah, sure. I think that LIS has, an incredible challenge in this area, taking students from a really wide variety of backgrounds, be it straight out of college to like 10 years out of education, and very different levels of like mathematical ability. And I can only speak to my personal circumstances, which is that, having been out of education for 8 years, and actually I'd received quite a low GCSE math grade, it was a real uphill struggle for me, and it was like a real test of like grittiness and resilience. And Anson and the rest of the quant staff were really incredible in supporting the confidence of getting there. But I think what I would say to someone who's kind of not feeling super confident, or maybe considering LIS but concerned about the quantitative side of it, is that the way I view it, of what they're trying to teach here, is you're not here to be an expert in calculus or to be like an expert at machine learning. You're here to learn how to tackle complex problems. And part of that means having an amount of numerical like literacy and data literacy to be able to have some techniques to make sense of what's going on behind that problem. But as kind of Logan alluded to, you may naturally sit more on a qualitative side of things. And so I think what's really important with the mathematical side or the quant side is understanding the philosophy of maths, like what is calculus trying to do or trying to show you, what's its value in the world. And this is something that Anson recommended that I, for example, read about. And then you just give it your best go, right? Because the reality is, and I think we're going to come on to this later, we've now got chat GPTs or GPTs that you can build yourself. So you're not looking to graduate of being able to do all of these really complex calculus calculations, because that can be done for you. But what you do need to graduate, or in my view, with the knowledge of, is like spotting, okay, what is this calculus trying to do? What is it trying to tell me? Where is it wrong? So you're trying to learn how to kind of interrogate, be quantity enough to be able to interrogate things and understand how quantitative data feeds into a complex problem, but you don't necessarily need to be a mathematician. And I think that the quant kind of faculty have done their absolute best and done really well on striking that balance across all of the cohorts. And that if you're serious about learning and about, especially as you're applying it to a problem area that you're like likely interested in and hopefully motivated for, they're serious about supporting you.
Fantastic. And we've had a question come in. I think this is probably a good point to bring this in. Can each of you please define, if you can, interdisciplinary? Can you say it first of all? Interdisciplinarity. Who would like to start?
It's got to be you guys. I can't do this. I
Rachel.
Oh gosh. When I am asked about this in public, often with other LIS students, we always like pass the baton of like, oh, it's your turn today.
Yeah.
To like give the elevator pitch, because I can't do it. Interdisciplinarity, in 2 sentences. For me, it's about being able to combine different fields of knowledge, as well as different methods on how, and then kind of amalgamating that, having this kind of big picture, or being able to wear different hats as you look at tackling something. So rather than being, and I think also there's value in having interdisciplinarians and specialists working on a problem, because you as an interdisciplinarian needs to keep that bird's eye view of, here is the problem and here is all of the potential disciplinary knowledge at like maybe a surface level as compared to somebody that's graduated in geography, that I know that I could maybe apply to look at this problem, and here are some methods that I think would be helpful. And then the specialist is the person that you turn to as a thought partner that goes, yeah, I think you're on something there, Rachel. We should delve deep into, I don't know, the symbiosis of X thing there. So I think, yeah, not a succinct explanation. I'm still working on it.
I'll come back in a second, actually, to sort of help out a bit, but I'm interested in Lamar and Logan's take on this as well. Just have a go, guys.
Well,
Go.
I've got a very academic response to this because I read quite a bit on interdisciplinarity as a concept itself for my project. But from what I understood, it's very much like I want to say, kind of art of taking one or more disciplines, synthesizing them, which means like extracting knowledge and putting it together and integrating them and performing like this act of synthesis. So integration and synthesis to come up with something new. So I think that's what I got from it. And what that, I guess, kind of looks like is looking at a problem, say inequality, like asking oneself what different disciplines can I use to interrogate this and come up with a perspective that draws from each of these disciplines to offer a new perspective onto something. And I think that's what interdisciplinarity at its core is. Yeah.
Fab. And Lamar?
Yeah, so of course I'm still a newbie to interdisciplinarity, but for me, especially as someone that's just starting, for me it is the link of multiple disciplines to go about solving something. So whether that be a complex problem or just a small scale problem, it's just using those disciplines to connect to go about with solving it. And I think it can sometimes get confused with multidisciplinarity as well, which is the use of multiple disciplines but you're not doing anything further with those disciplines. You're just using them in a succinct way rather than using them in a succinct way whilst acknowledging how they link.
Love
Fantastic, guys. I just want to say that in some ways I think it's a bit of an unfair question because, of course, we get this question all the time. But if you ask a lot of students, like, what is economics? I mean, there's kind of a textbook answer, like it's the study of the competition for scarce resources. But is it actually? I mean, that's a textbook answer. What does that even mean? So you've got two critiques of that definition. One, what does it even mean? And two, is that really economics? Someone's just put it in a textbook. So, of course, because interdisciplinarity is quite new, not that new actually, but fairly new in trying to be rolled out like LIS is doing it. And because it's a big word, you know, there's this pressure to define it. And students would say, yeah, but what is it really? But, you know, if you ask most math students what's maths, if they're undergraduates, they won't have a very good answer, actually. Some might say it's numbers. Well, mathematicians would roll their eyes at that and say it's nothing to do with numbers. Some might say it's the study of patterns and relationships. That's pretty cool, but I'm not sure how many undergrads would say that. Some might say it's about structures. And, you know, do you know what I mean? So any particular discipline is actually quite hard to define and very contentious, actually, about where the boundaries of a discipline are. It's just we've all grown up with accepting those boundaries. Interdisciplinarity doesn't have that luxury. So we're always, as interdisciplinarians, we're always forced on the back foot to define it, which makes it seem a bit tougher. But actually, if you put together these three answers, I mean, it's a pretty amazing definition you've got there, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. And should we take this moment to kind of have a quick look through what student life is? We've got a few pictures which I'll just sort of walk through, and then any of you just sort of jump in if you sort of recognise the pictures, or certainly how that is from a student experience point of view, in terms of what the classes look like, in terms of what it's like living in London, maybe some of the projects. But I'll sort of gradually work their way through. But I'm sort of keen to sort of what the student experience is as being at university generally, or suppose what you think your experience is given the fact that you're at this particular place.
Yeah.
I'll have to say this when I saw this one was kind of what I had in my mind, having spoken to Carl before, was just that sense of that seemed to sort of epitomise everything that I was thinking of.
Unfortunately, Kiva's cut his hair now, so he doesn't wear such nice bandanas.
Yeah.
I mean, you certainly do get that idea of the collaboration coming through from him, I think.
Wow, these are throwbacks.
That's the very room I'm in, isn't it, guys? Downstairs now.
Yeah, it is.
Well, this was what I obviously caught my mind as podcaster and sort of community front.
What's that? Is that a Maria class? Is that a Maria hand? We've got a fantastic head of art who's really wildly out there and creative and digital and all sorts of other media.
Brilliant. That looks like a problem 1A. Think the mind map.
Tackling,
Okay.
yeah, it says tackling the to policy client.
Right.
Oh, that's the design lab.
Yes, that's maybe an external.
Which I'm about to undertake next week.
Yes.
Any tips, Logan?
Keep your
Oh,
head
interesting.
and patience.
That might be our pitches at the end of the year at the
That's our
Conduit Club.
pitches.
Yeah, that is
Is
the
right?
conduit. First year, no, second year
Yeah.
actually. I think that's Lambo in front.
Yeah, that is like
What are you doing there, guys? Is that photography with Maria?
Probably.
it's visual methods, isn't it? It's a qualitative module.
This must have been first
Visual
year.
ways of engaging with the world. Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah.
Visual methods is great because it's kind of under.
Oh my god.
What's that?
Oh, the listener.
The listener was
Logan.
the podcast that Lucia, Vishal, and I started, and we had a spare room, so we made it our little office. And as you can see, the listener logo everywhere.
Excellent.
Oh,
You said
Nice.
started. Does it mean it's finished, or was it still ongoing?
it started, and then as LIS went through, more workload, less podcast.
Right.
I think I can't see like everyone else's video, so I don't know who's talking, but I think what's really interesting about these images, and I don't know if you'd agree, Logan and Lamar, is that they kind of give up, like, well, they I hope that they communicate kind of the expansiveness of being at LIS. So I think the three of us are really like a unique position, particularly Logan, as that, you know, we're all founding students of this faculty, of this university, and Carl's a founding faculty, but Logan particularly founding student. And so a lot of these images, when I'm looking at them, is not only like, and kind of going on to Carl's point about how difficult it is to define interdisciplinarity because it's so new, is that we have such freedom in terms of what we're learning within kind of, regulatory requirements as interdisciplinary students, but B, actually defining, and I mean, it's probably should come to Logan this, but like defining and creating our experiences here, because we are brand new and we are building an institution from scratch. So as students, we are very much experiencing the curriculum alongside building the curriculum. And that's what I think these images, for me at least, viewing them, show.
Yeah, I love that. And we've got something here for you, Logan. If you've got a bit more time on your hands coming up, bring back the listener.
I will try to. I can't promise anything though.
And I think, Carl, you had a couple of things that you specifically were going to chat about in a couple of sort of different projects and different things that were going on. So why don't I sort of let you sort of lead that for a moment?
I think the one was about the AI. So the module which Rachel kindly mentioned it's very different. It does take a bit of a while to explain. So stop me if I'm going to lose your listeners, Mark. But it's a second-year compulsory module called Mental Models and Super Concepts, Interdisciplinary Ways to View the World. And so I'm not going to tell you all about super concepts or mental models, really, but it's very different. There's, I think, no module like this in the world, but it does what's said on the tin. We teach some big ideas and some small ideas, and they're designed to help students think across different disciplines, very self-consciously, kind of in big, creative ways, and in small ways, which kind of, as Logan was saying, actually a bit, could help oblige them to confront some of their own biases and the biases of other people they'll be working with, which hopefully facilitates their own kind of work. But I actually find this module really interesting, and I've thought about this more this year, Rachel, that I think it's very contemporary because it's, on the one hand, incredibly intellectual. It's a proper academic module, but it's actually quite a lot about personal development as well. And I really like that combination. That feels very current. But why I wanted to mention it today, Mark, was because the assignment this year was very much leaning into the use of AI. So Rachel's just completed an essay on super concepts and mental models applied to a problem of interest to her. And the assignment required her to use AI to write that essay. It was called a collaborative essay with AI. And the kicker, which has been so exciting for me to view, was all students had to produce a 5-minute, or in Rachel's case, she pushed the boundaries a bit, so more like a 6-minute, explainer of how she used the AI in writing her piece. And this, honestly, this is amazing stuff from some students. So you see, they reflect on their interaction with AI, with ChatGPT or Bard, or some even use some audio AI. And you see the dialogue, and you see the learning journey. You see the reflection on the learning journey. You see all that self-criticality of, like, I realized I needed to ask this question. I realized I need to go to another AI for referencing because the other one wasn't very good. I went back to the beginning and asked them to structure the essay for me. And that's just incredible. It's like that kind of thing you read about, that AI may really become our helper and our teacher in really profound personal ways that we kind of been talking about for 15 years now, since Web 2.0, but hadn't really happened. And yeah, it's just really exciting to me. And I must say, on the whole, the student work is remarkable. And I don't want to push this too hard, because if an old guy like me keeps saying, this is amazing, the natural thing of young people to say, yeah, granddad, shut up, you're wrong, and push back a bit. But I do sense a real advance in their own learning in this, and some of them, maybe with serious dyslexia or something, are still producing written work of a very high quality and asking very interesting questions, because dyslexia doesn't mean you're not articulate. They're very articulate, they just don't like writing. So asking great questions, and then that's being the writing part's happening for them with the AI, but their work is all in the questions, and in realizing the further questions they could have asked. So yeah, just to say, this is kind of, so what the bigger picture here, I think, is the way we can be agile, we can be flexible. We're constantly trying to be a bit creative in what we do. And yeah, Logan's experienced a lot of this. He was saying before we came on air that, a lot has changed even since he was here in year one. And that has been, honestly, let's be honest, Logan, at times it's been tough. It's a startup. We know that there have been wrong corners taken, and we've tried to address them as quickly as possible. I think it's... and so Logan's learning journey is slightly different to next generations, because he's seen even more of the kind of fast curve of the development of a startup. Rachel has also seen some of that, maybe Lamar a bit less. And that's all fine. But I think, we're going to be a startup for a while yet, and particularly want to lean into this AI thing now, because that's not going away. And I think, I don't know if Anson's still on the call, and of course he's not talking at this moment, but Anson's thoughts on quant and AI are really, really interesting too, and he's quite up on it. So that is an area we might develop in the next year or two, how we get students, as Rachel was saying, interrogating quantitative work using AI tools, but having the knowledge and the sort of philosophical understanding of quant to use those tools to get really good results and really good interrogation out. So yeah, this partnership with AI is something I piloted this year on my module. I'm very excited by the results, and it's just an example of the more sort of creative aspects we want to keep doing, because it's an amazing time in the world, and universities, but universities, a lot of them are stuck in the distant past, and we don't have that legacy, and so we need to keep iterating and being creative, even if it means sometimes we'll take a few wrong turnings on the way.
And Rachel, sort of having been involved, what was your sort of experience, apart from obviously creating the extra minute that maybe you didn't have to begin with?
Yes. I was really pleased to see LIS kind of take this approach, because I think, Carl's right. AI, particularly large language models, are here to stay in education, and people are going to use them. So you can kind of either, regulate around them. And of course we do have an AI policy, but I actually was really encouraged by this challenge of actually you have to write this vision paper with AI, because it's forcing you to then work out how do I want to use AI, and how do I know that the stuff it's giving me is correct? And so the reason why my explainer was a minute over, and I did provide feedback on this, was because I was using AI, or I was using ChatGPT as essentially a thought partner for my vision paper. So I was kind of feeding it my ideas, and spending I think over maybe 10 days, absolutely hours and hours and hours of engineering these prompts to it, and saying, and I'm really like priming it and saying, what do you think a vision paper is and should include, and why do you think it should include these things? And okay, based on that, how would you structure it? And then kind of every time it gave me a response, right, I'm iterating that on going, I kind of like that idea, but not really, try this. And kind of on the thought partner thing, I'm saying to it, okay, these are my ideas. I've got this like wildly idea about chronic pain and meme plexes and people's ideas and beliefs about being in chronic pain. And what do you think? Like, do you think that does that work with, these are like the theorists in that area, here is some key bodies of their work, how can you see that fitting into their theories? And then it would kind of chuck more stuff back at me. So it was the volume was just literally reams and reams and reams. And I think there was maybe this assumption, and Carl can kind of come back on this, that actually doing it with AI would make it easier or quicker. And I disagree, right? I spent so much time, like happily, teaching it what I wanted, and because I had such a strong sense of what I wanted to write, and then basically like debating with it back and forth. And then when I had to explain in a nuanced way how I'd used AI and how I'd interrogated all his bias, I had a bit of the huff. I was a bit shortchanged. I was like, this is not enough space for me to tell you exactly what I did. But yeah, the assessment was really expansive. It was visionary in itself, and you just wouldn't get this at a normal or like at a standard institution. So like, what an opportunity for me to actually work out like, how do I like using a large language model, and what is it actually good for?
Love it.
Amazing.
So we've got a couple of questions and a couple of things that have come in as well, which I think we should have a look at as well. So I'll work backwards first of all. What type of career do you see yourself going into after LIS, and what have you learned at LIS to help you with that? So why don't you start, Lamar, this time? I know it might seem a little bit of a way having to start it, but if you can sort of
it's a little while away, but from careers wise, I try to keep myself as open as possible. But the three main ones that I think I can see myself in is marketing as a brand strategist, some sort of consultancy, or the last one through market research. And I think each of them link really well to the degree. So as a brand strategist, I think you have to have a very interdisciplinary approach to how you go about with helping a brand to strategize to make as much money as possible. And this is quite similar, I'd say, to market research, and the fact that I'm researching for people about problems that they basically can't find out themselves. So basically going out and getting as much research as possible to make them understand how they can go about with moving on to solve this problem. And consultancy is a very, I think it's more of the general vibe that people would give from seeing what we do, like being able to be good at so many different things and have so many different skills. And I think that's like probably the one that I keep in my back pocket, like worst case scenario. But yeah, it's something that I'm just someone that wants to be around people and to have one-on-one relations with people to help them to solve problems.
Great. And Logan, I guess you're close to being there, so you obviously thinking about this already and putting some feelers out into what that might look like.
Oh, that is honestly a very scary thought. But I guess for me, like we're very privileged at LIS that they help us find internships over the summer. And I've been very fortunate in being able to do 2 internships over my 2 summers here. And I think the biggest takeaway from those experiences was that what I've learned from LIS has given me the ability to and the confidence to just go out in the real world and be adaptable. And what that means for after LIS is I'm still in the same position I was 3 years ago of I don't know what I want out of life. I don't know what I want to do as a career. But I know that now I have the skill set to go out, try new things, see what works for me, what doesn't. And like similar to Mar, like what comes first to mind is for me personally is just like consultancy, not in the traditional like big four, you get given a problem, you give them here's a solution, and they don't really take it on board, but more in the here's a complex problem, here's a solution that we've thought about and we would like to kind of make it into a reality. That's something I see myself doing. Or having my own startup. Like I've always been passionate about starting my own kind of businesses or just ideas and seeing where they go, and that's definitely something I want to take on board.
Great. And Rachel, I guess as someone who's been in the workforce and come out to you heading back in the same sort of direction, using your new skills, completely different, what are your thoughts at this stage?
My thoughts are, I think, kind of Logan's alluded to it as well. The great thing about LIS is because we cover like such vast topics in terms of disciplinary perspectives, but also in the methods across the arts, science, humanities. I think you can basically really lean into whichever, right? So the whole point is they're trying to equip us with this breadth of knowledge, enough knowledge so that we could go and then be self-sufficient on our own. And I think people graduating out of LIS, as someone that used to hire and work with graduates, have a much more not only like general footing in terms of disciplinary knowledge, but just in terms of their characteristics. So it's really a place where, you know, it's not for everyone. And I think Ed, our CEO, talks about this quite publicly. Like, you have to be willing to fail and you have to be resilient and gritty. And so I think they're doing really well at developing all of those skills as well. And so I think it's interesting because the three of us have just come from an impact fund pitch, which was started by one of our students, where we've got student-led projects going on that we're now looking to fund. And so I think there's so many different ways you could take that. You know, I wouldn't be surprised to see entrepreneurs and businesses started coming out of this. No, I wouldn't be surprised to see people go to consultancies. I also wouldn't be surprised to see people go straight off into the arts. For me personally, I think I'm finished working for other people. I think I'd like something of my own, is kind of where I'm heading. Or if not, then probably into strategy is kind of where I'd like to be. But I also think a lot of the roles that are out there now, particularly in kind of the tech market, things like product management is interdisciplinary. Marketing, I think Lamar's is interdisciplinary. Change management is interdisciplinary. And I think there is this big opportunity, as Carl kind of spoke on earlier, with if AI does become this human helper or this thought partner, and this partnership between, really the great things is what's going to come out between human and AI, like working together. And so I think there's a massive market for like change makers or people in change organizational management there. And I think LIS is doing a great job at getting some change makers out into the world.
Yeah.
Could I add a thought after that as well, please?
Yeah.
So another like something that just popped to mind is Carl touched upon earlier, just like, and I think this is something that everyone at LIS has in common, is that hunger for learning. And I think what that means for and just for my career is like the notion of the interactional expertise. I know that's Carl's topic of the moment right now, but I think it's really interesting because, like, from what I've understood, it's the idea that you can spend enough time in an area that you haven't studied and be knowledgeable enough to interact with experts. And I think as generalists or interdisciplinarians, however you want to label us, like, that's something we strive for. And I guess what an ideal career for me would be is just like putting myself in situations where I can learn as much and become an interactional expertise in as many areas as possible. Yeah.
I think we'll see a lot of leaders coming from this program, Mark. I know it's funny, UK is a bit strange about talking about leadership. We're a bit embarrassed in the UK to talk about. You're in America or maybe in China or France, it's like next generation of leaders. But it's quite British to be a bit sort of down on leaders. But I do think a lot of the people here will lead in social mission, hopefully in politics. Actually, we have a dearth of quality people in politics, heaven knows, in this country. Hopefully some of our people will revitalize that and be better politicians than the last generation. And then startups that people have mentioned. So a lot of innovators. When I say leaders, I suppose I mean just people doing things first that need to be done, being brave, going out there and doing it. And I think partly they're born this way. People attracted to us have that in their toolkit anyway, but hopefully that while they're with us, they'll also develop that and become even braver and have a taste for it. So I think leadership in the widest sense of innovation, striking out and doing something meaningful, I think we'll have plenty of that from graduating from LIS.
Yeah, brilliant. And just to sort of, as we sort of start to finish off, thank you so much. It really has been fascinating. I've learned so much as we've gone through. I think this idea of how exactly are we going to be able to qualify in terms of the degree itself, in terms of how it's marked and all that, but this idea of creativity, which is really important to me, in terms of, are there a set of measures, observations, demos towards the end of a student's time that shows their level of creativity? And I guess, Carl, you might be the person to
So yeah, it's definitely been one of my side hustles for over a decade, is writing about and researching about creativity. Actually, you've just brought to mind, I gave a crazy paper in Genoa about 7 years ago I spoke in Italian, which they loved. They all stayed up, gave me a standing ovation like it was an opera recital, because I speak a bit of Italian because I used to be an opera singer. So there we are. That's sort of nuts thing that interdisciplinary people do, is give papers about creativity in Italian in Genoa. I mean, no, look, there's no list, right? There isn't a list that you can tick off these days that says, or any time, that says this is evidence of creativity. The evidence has to be the work itself, has to be the product. And I guess, it will be the capstone dissertations that come out, the questioner, whoever that was, a question there. And it'll be, presentations. If you can come along to some of our student presentations, we usually have them at the end of year 1 and year 2, first years and second years. And I guess then, you'll just have to make a call as to whether you think that was creative work. And partly going back to what I said just a minute ago, actually, I think you've got to give it a bit of time as well. So say 5 years down the line, we've got, 10, 20 LIS graduates doing really cool things in social startups or in commercial startups or being entrepreneurs in companies. Then I think we have more and more evidence that they can say, this actually started for me at LIS. I got a taste for being creative, a taste for shaking things up, being disruptive. That's the phrase, isn't it? And actually, I just received an email about this morning, actually, a really moving email from a student of mine in my previous job, which was also an interdisciplinary degree. I'm not going to read that on air now, but it was amazing, describing her journey. She's about 28, 29 now, and how, looking back, she feels it was all very much her worldview and her mindset and her psychology was set up to be creative on that program. So I'm very optimistic. I mean, you heard it tonight, and I'm very optimistic we're going to have many, many students from LAS with that kind of creative impact, shall we say, on the wider world.
Yeah, well, I'd just like to say a big thank you to all of you in terms of what you've done, and thank you for your time. But I think just getting to hear and see that picture of what you're doing and your experiences personally and also collectively is really, really inspiring. And I just hope that people watching and people who then watch on the replay have that real sort of, I guess, sort of insight into what their experience could be, but also I think the wonder of what is possible. And I think that's one of the things that came across for me, is the sense that you might not know what that job is going to be or what this particular unit's going to be when you're going to start. But what it does mean is that no matter what situation you're going to be in now, but certainly in the years to come, like you say, whatever that job or place of being in any community is going to look like, you're going to be at the heart of it and be strong and in a position to kind of be a leader, as Carl was saying. And I think that's a very exciting prospect when you're thinking about what your next steps are, certainly going into a university. Yeah, so thank you all very much. Is there any final thought, Carl, you'd like to say, or the other, just before we finish off?
No, I do feel like a proud granddad, I have to say. Sorry, students. Yeah, it's a pleasure to work with these people, and it's hard work. It's very intense, this course. I don't know if we have any younger people listening to the call. I mean, it's not a soft touch, and none of the students here would say that. So be aware of that. But that intensity does kind of forge you in the fire, like when you go through these struggles, you become a different person, and hopefully a stronger and a better person. So no, it's just great to work with these people, even when it gets tough. We all feel we're on doing something important. All of us, faculty, students, we all feel we're engaged in an important project, and that is a great feeling.
Brilliant. Well, Rachel, Logan, Lamar, thank you so much for your time as well. I really do appreciate it, and I love the togetherness that you have for what you're studying, but also your unique journeys as well. So yeah, thanks so much indeed. So thank you to everyone who's been involved. I really do appreciate it. As always, we're just going to cover a couple of things before we finish off. And as I mentioned earlier on, This was Carl's conversation with me. So if you look up episode 377 on any podcast platform, it'll pop up. But certainly if you go to educationonfire.com, you'll be able to find that page. And as you can see, you can listen directly on the website there as well. And I just wanted to also bring this up. As you know, BBC Teach were on the show a few weeks ago talking about all the great things they're doing. And this one is coming up, a science live lesson of deadly mission shark. You can see all the details there. And obviously Steve Bachelor is going to be there Wednesday, the 31st of January at 11 o'clock. The direct link to this and more information are in the show notes of this episode. So do click through, go and have a look at that, see how you can get involved, how you can sign up and get involved in all the great work that they're doing there at BBC Teach. And thanks for that, for them keeping me in the loop of everything. And please do check that out. And we've got some more conversations with what we're doing related to BBC Teach coming up in the coming weeks as well. So yeah, thank you very much indeed. I will say goodbye. I'm back again next week, and I think we're talking about VR and AI again, but from someone that's actually involved in creating it and putting it into the world. So that's going to be fascinating as well. So look forward to doing that and speak to you again next week. Education is not the filling of a pail, but the lighting of a fire.